This is C-SPAN's Road to the White House. Up next, a debate between four third-party presidential candidates. Last Wednesday, Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, hosted the forum with the nominees from the Libertarian, Socialist, Green, and Constitution parties.
Hey, it's a great crowd. My God, I didn't believe this. It's a beautiful auditorium. Cornell is making a great gesture here tonight, and I'll spend only a couple minutes getting you in the mood. This is a third party's debate, and yet third party. They never mention fourth party, fifth party, multi-party, or anything else. It's always third parties. How many thirds can there be, you know? Well, I tell you why that's the case, and this is because America is the only two-party system in the world, and it believes in the two-party system as though it came from God or the Founding Fathers or both. The two-party system. Therefore, the third party is like a fifth wheel, so you can have lots of fifth wheels, since they're superfluous anyway. That's the underlying philosophy of the designation third party. Well, you'll see real people pushing real programs with a party organization behind them and on some ballots, which is very difficult to do because the whole legal system is biased against third parties, and this is the sort of thing I've been condemning for many, many years. They're all programmatic and ideological parties. They have a program using the election as a means of getting their message out. So you are here paying honor to them, and they're here to give you some enlightenment, which I'm sure will come. There'll be disagreements among them. They're going to be given only 2 minutes each to open. Then we will open this up there. I won't be able to see you very well, but we'll have microphones down here. We'll open it up to you to bring questions to them, and I have a few in my pocket in case things get slow. And we'll move on then from these 2-minute presentations and let them make further comments toward each other as the evening goes on. And at the end, the format provides that they'll each have 2 minutes, a generous 2 minutes. If it goes a little over, okay too. I'll be the policeman, but I'll be the good cop. And that's the way this thing will work. But it will be a success more because of your participation. That's what we're here for. They're going to give you a big target to shoot at, 4 big targets to shoot at. But the whole thing depends upon your participation. Your being here is a wonder, is a marvel, and I hope you'll see it through to the very successful end. They will speak in this order, and then I will reduce myself to the policeman and watch the timing. I'll just give you each of them in the order of their agreed-upon presentations, and then they will take it from there. Michael Peroutka of the Constitution Party. Good. David Cobb of the Green Party. All right. Walt Brown of the Socialist Party. And Michael Bednarik of the Libertarian Party. It's all yours.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Anthony Peroutka, and I'm privileged to be the Constitution Party candidate for President of the United States. I want to thank Professor Lowry and others here who have done so much work to put on this debate. And I want to thank my colleagues, my opponents in this debate as well. The themes of our campaign are God, family, and the Republic. We need to honor God, defend the family, and restore the constitutional republic. And we begin right where our founding fathers began, with an acknowledgement of the God from whom all blessings flow and who is the author of law and liberty and government. That's where our founding fathers began, and that's where we must begin. We need to defend the family against those who would actually redefine what it means. We need to defend the family against those who would redefine marriage. We need to defend the family against those who would take the lives of the most innocent among us, the first duty of government being to protect the shedding of innocent blood. And so we would protect the family against those who would abort the youngest among us, the most innocent among us. And we must restore the republic. Ladies and gentlemen, most people in America think we are a democracy. I always say to people, repeat the Pledge of Allegiance and stop at the 16th word. And to the republic, and to the republic. We are a constitutional representative republic. There is a difference, and it's not just a distinction. It is a real difference. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to represent the Constitution Party because the Constitution Party is the truly American party. Now, why do I say that? The truly American party because there is, ladies and gentlemen, an American view of law and liberty and government. There is an American view. It's stated pretty clearly and articulately in our Declaration of Independence. Our founders said that all men are created equal, not evolved equal, but created equal. In order to say such a thing, one must consider that there is a creator God, that our rights come from him. The purpose of government is to protect and secure and defend those rights. This is the American view. Both major parties are committed to another view, a socialist view of government that says that the purpose is to redistribute wealth. So I ask you to consider what we're trying to accomplish, which is a restoration of the American Republic and to return to constitutional government in America. I thank you very much for your kind attention. GodFamilyRepublic.com. Thank you.
Howdy, folks. My name is David Cobb, and I represent the Green Party of the United States. And I'm here to make some sharp distinctions between the Green Party and the Constitution Party, because I want to say, folks, the Green Party is getting larger, it's getting stronger, it's getting better organized with every election cycle, and the Greens are growing against all odds. We're excluded from the debates. The media normally tries to marginalize us or ignore us. A voting system that forces progressive voters to feel like they have to vote against what they hate rather than for what they want. Greens are growing in that climate, and I'll tell you, it comes down to one simple thing. Greens tell the truth. We are telling the truth about a looming ecological crisis, a genuine catastrophe. Our earth is being destroyed, and Greens will tell that truth. Greens further tell the truth that we live in a racist, sexist, and class-oppressive world order. Greens will tell the truth about that. And Greens will also tell the truth that this is not a democracy, but it should be. Because democracy means the people rule. We should be ruling ourselves, not allowing unelected and unaccountable corporate CEOs to rule for us. And that's what's happening, folks, because today corporations are not just exercising power. Corporations are ruling us. They are making the fundamental public policy decisions that affect our lives. And that's one thing that neither John Kerry nor George W. Bush will grapple with. We will. Greens will tell the truth about that. Folks, we'll also tell the truth about the fact that we're at war in Iraq over oil. Greens will tell the truth that we need to get out of Iraq and bring our troops home. Greens will tell the truth that we need single-payer universal health care for all. Health care is a human right, and it should be applied and available to all. Greens tell the truth about the need for raising the minimum wage to a true living wage so that everybody is able to make enough money to raise themselves above the poverty level and live in genuine dignity. The Green Party is a working people's party. We're a growing party, and I'm asking for your support. David Cobb, go to our website, www.votecobb.org, and get involved in a fast-growing party that'll take our country back from these corporate fat cats who have hijacked it from us. Peace.
I'm going to split my 3 minutes 3 ways. A little bit of a thank you to a lot of people who should be thanked. A minute for biographical and a minute for party orientation. But before I get on that, God, family, and republic, that doesn't separate us. It doesn't separate our parties. And to say so, maybe, is a misrepresentation. I was on the board of directors of a Methodist church when I was 16. I led a Unitarian Universalist Christian fellowship dedicated to Albert Schweitzer when I was 45. I was married in a church, and a minister officiated at my wife's burial at Arlington National Cemetery. Let's not get hung up. Family, I was married for 48 years. Married for 48 years. One of my 3 sons went to this university. Family. Let's not get hung up on that. Republic. Very, very interesting. the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States was written by a socialist. His name was Bellamy, and he was a Baptist minister from Boston. So much for a republic. My sincere thanks to the Cornell Mock Election 2004 Steering Committee, and particularly to Julia O'Hearn, because she was my contact, and to my younger brothers and sisters at the Telluride Association who graciously put my wife and myself up there. I had to call upon calling my chest because David was a resident there for 2 years. Mary's here somewhere with some handouts, and when you leave tonight, we're going to hit you at the door and give you some handouts. And I want to thank the Cornell students. It was not too long ago that I was a student. This is mid-year, midterm time for papers and exams. And if you want to get a better grade average than George Bush, which was C- in history at Yale, you want to do your work. Now, it kept him out of law school when he got him in the White House, so it doesn't always work against you. But thank you for coming tonight. You'll not go home impoverished. I'm not one of those people that believes no good deed goes unpunished. You get karma. You're going to get a lot of karma tonight. Thank you. And thanks to the concerned citizens who are going to listen to this tonight and who are not going to turn it off. Thank you very much for listening. Okay, introductions. We all are different. I'm different. I'm the oldest of the group. I'm probably the lamest from a World War II injury that I refused to get a handicap permit, and I have trouble getting up the stairs. But the name is Walter F. I go as Walt when I run for office. I've been a state senator many years in Oregon. What's my occupation? I'm a volunteer for the last 12 years while a cent of income. I've got the most volunteer law hours in the Oregon State Bar. I'm a volunteer attorney for the Consumer Justice Alliance, but I do something useful other than law. I'm a family tree farmer, and I don't grow Christmas trees, but I grow timber trees on 185 acres cut during World War I and never replanted. Occupational background, a little bit deaf to the left ear because I was an aircraft riveter, or bucker rather, without protection. I carried mail when I was a teenager, construction labor, faculty Northwestern School of Law. Educational background, 2 degrees in law from the University of Southern California. Studied constitutional law at Harvard as a graduate student, also as an undergraduate student, as a law student. I've got nothing against the Constitution. Maybe we should be called the Socialist Constitution Party. Master's in government from Boston University and an MALS from Oregon. He says, sit out. Okay. 1 or 2 quick items. We represent a worldwide movement for democracy in the workplace, in economics, political, and social life. I'll tell you more about it later, but remember this. The word socialist didn't come from Marx or Hitler or Mao Zedong or Castro. It came from a Christian industrialist by the name of John Owen, who thought that you could run business fair for the workers and the consumers, and came to the United States and got a standing ovation in a joint session of Congress for his ideas. The word socialist comes out of a consumer cooperative publication in 1828, and it has nothing to do with those Nogutskis. And when the FBI or President Bush show their ignorance and they want to give us a bad time, or President Wilson during World War I, time's up. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you so much for hosting this event. My name is Michael Bednarik, and I'm the Libertarian candidate for president. Many people think that because we are libertarians that we are liberals. And while we do have liberal positions on some issues, we also have conservative positions on other issues. So this tends to confuse people a little bit. Libertarians are for liberty. We are essentially libertarians. Now, fortunately, your age group has a very visceral understanding of what liberty is. Many of you have already moved away from home. Certainly in the next few years, almost all of you will have moved away from home. And the reason that you do that is for liberty. Mom, I love you. Dad, you're my best friend, but I'm going to go off on my own. I'm going to make my own decisions. I will decide when I go to bed at night. I will decide what foods I eat and what activities I participate in. Being able to make your own decisions is the essence of liberty. And the Libertarian Party believes that in any decision about your life, either you can make that decision or the government can make the decision for you. And libertarians are overwhelmingly in favor of you making your own decisions. We are also here at this debate to emphasize the idea that you are not required to vote for the lesser of two evils. You are not wasting your vote. The only time that you are wasting your vote is if you vote for a candidate who is going to raise your taxes, who will continue the war, who will restore the draft, pass additional unconstitutional laws like the Patriot Act, and continue to operate the government with a deficit budget. Why would you vote for anyone like that? At this stage of your life, you are making your own decisions, and I encourage you to continue to do so. Investigate the parties, find the party and the platform that best represents your views, and then vote for the person that you think will best represent you in Washington. And thank you very much for your time.
The Libertarian gets very positive marks and 5 stars for keeping within the time budget. That's always nice. The format from here on in, and I'll try to be a good cop, but stricter than I was. I couldn't be seen over there for one thing. The cameramen were knocking me down and everything else. But the format is that we are, don't let me forget, I have your watch. Mine didn't have a second hand. The one watch I brought didn't have a second hand on it. But the format now is to open up your questions to you, and these gentlemen will respond to them. You can address in one individual or to the whole group, and we'll try to keep your questions brief. Try not to make a speech, or if it is, make it a soundbite speech. And we hope that the responses from our 4 candidates will be equally observant of the time constraints so that we can maximize participation. I am told, I don't see them because of the glare, that there are microphones down front. Is that correct? Where are they? Where are our wonderful organizers? Oh, they're all right. They're up in the middle. Okay, sorry. You agree with me if you're down here. It's completely blinding. So I already see one. I can hardly see no one on this one if you want to be second, but I recognize the gentleman over there for the first question.
Well, thank you all for coming today. My name is Jamie Weinstein. You all gave pretty nice speeches, and you seem like all very nice people. But today you're here in a way to say that your serious candidates for president should be considered with the other 2 candidates, the national candidates, if you will, President Bush and Senator John Kerry. Yet in your speeches, none of you mentioned what to most is a very serious issue, which is the war on terror, which we are currently faced in. Not one of you mentioned that any steps you would take to defeat this and protect this nation. So I'm interested, if you guys are serious candidates, what would you do to win this war?
This was addressed to all of you. I see your hand first.
Thank you, James.
Mr. Perutka.
Again, Michael Perutka, the Constitution Party. The war is unconstitutional. That's the very first threshold question. We have not declared war in Iraq. The very first sentence of the Constitution says, after the preamble, says all legislative authority herein granted is vested in a Congress of the United States. The power to declare war is a congressional power, and we have not done that. We haven't declared war since World War II, actually. So the very first threshold question is we're there illegally. We have no right to call other regimes rogue regimes when we don't follow our own rules. The Constitution Party, the Perutka presidency, if God would grant that victory, would be to remove our troops as safely and as swiftly as possible. We never found yellow cake, we never found a connection with Al-Qaeda, and we never found weapons of mass destruction. We're there unconstitutionally and unnecessarily.
Any others want to join? Yes.
Well,
Good. Okay.
David Cobb with the Green Party, and I want to grapple actually with the underlying idea about what terrorism is. The reality is that U.S. foreign policy is currently promoting and protecting a transnational corporate empire that is oppressing people throughout the world, stealing resources from folks, mostly people of color from the global south. U.S. foreign policy is creating the conditions upon which people are acting. And if we want to actually address the root causes of terrorism and move towards genuine global security, we got to get a handle on U.S. foreign policy. I'll tell you the other thing that we need to do is develop sustainable alternative energy sources to wean us off of the addiction to oil that's driving not just war in the Middle East and throughout the world, but also global warming. I mean, it is, after all, the U.S. Pentagon that says that global warming and global climate change is the biggest single global security threat that this country faces. The Green Party is the only political party that's actually outlining a genuine systemic plan to do so.
Comments from the others? That cover the territory? Okay.
You going to comment?
No need if you wish to.
I'll comment. I was asked a question like that by the Orange County Register when I ran in the Peace and Freedom primary in California. And I wrote back and said, find out why they don't like us. And they thought that was kind of a shocking sort of an answer. All but one of the people who died in those plane crashes, the Middle Easterners who died in the plane crash, were Saudi Arabians. What is our relationship with the Saudi Arabian government that causes them to be so aggravated with us? It's not a difficult question to come up with the answer. Saudi Arabian government and our government have been in bed exploiting their oil resources for years and years. The second answer to this question, the United States government itself should stop being terrorist. Let me read from one short statement.
No, I think you made your point, Walt. I think that's good enough for now. Please. All right, Michael. Yeah.
The Constitution allows us to do national defense. It does not allow us to do international offense. We have military in the 135 countries around the world where we are influencing other governments, we are influencing other economies, and we are politically poking other countries in the eye with a sharp stick. It's very little wonder that they're not happy with our foreign policy. The people in Iraq, 92% of them consider us occupiers, and our strategy for winning friends and influencing people is apparently to blow up buildings and kill innocent civilians. I think the only proper solution is to bring our sons and daughters home as safely and quickly as possible.
Good.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Zasadak, and I'm a senior here. And I'd like to hear the candidates' positions on a clean money campaign finance reform system whereby candidates could opt out of private financing, which has a corrupting influence on government policy, and use public funds to run their campaigns. I would particularly like to hear from Mr. Cobb and Mr. Bednarik, if I could, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. The Green Party and myself and Patricia LaMarche, my running mate, are clear and unambiguous in our support for publicly funded elections. We should understand that elections are the infrastructure of democracy. You know, they're going to be funded, and either we, the people, can fund them, or we can continue to allow the corporate fat cats to fund them. And let's be clear about this. When these big corporations make contributions, at best, most charitably, we should call them investments, and they expect a very significant return on their investments. But frankly, folks, I told you Greens will tell the truth. Let's really truthfully call what this private election funding system really is. Legalized bribery. That's what we're dealing with today, and the Green Party is calling for full publicly funded elections so that we can actually have elections where we, the people, can begin to move in the direction of controlling our own government.
Anyone else? Allow for applause if you wish it.
The only type of rights that exist are individual rights. People have freedom of speech, and that freedom of speech is essentially protected for freedom of political speech. Individuals should have the right to contribute as much as they want, as long as that information is recorded and published. Corporations should not be funding political campaigns because they have access to millions and millions of dollars that they provide to both parties, indicating that there isn't a ideological slant. They are simply trying to grease the skids for whichever candidate gets elected so they can get their legislation passed to protect their particular industry.
Let me interject a question. I got mixed up on you on this, Mike. It sounds to me like you departed from your liberal freedom thing. Corporations under the law are persons. So how can you deal with them as other than and having the same freedoms as individuals?
Well, the 14th Amendment is basically wrong. Corporations are artificial entities. They are not humans with freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Corporations, by their very nature are immortal and can last, forever, theoretically.
Let it be known that the Libertarian Party would like to go back and change the 14th Amendment, and I think I'll join you on that, okay?
Let me just jump in and say, I'd like to actually keep the 14th Amendment the way it is and interpret it correctly. It was a Supreme Court decision that got it wrong.
Let's go. Okay.
Let me just quickly come at that question from a little different angle. Federal offices and offices across the country are very valuable, and that is why corrupting influences happen to them. They are very, very valuable because they control a great deal of money and influence. And I think another way to look at this is that if there was less consolidation of power, our founders would have called it consolidation. If there's less concentration of power in Washington, D.C., there would be less to corrupt and bribe. And I believe this is where the Constitution Party, a limited enumerated powers approach. We can only spend money on things that are authorized in Article 1, Section 8. 18 things is a list of them. And I think that if we limit the power, the spending, the unauthorized spending in Congress, we will help to eliminate this problem as well.
Well, you had a comment also.
I taught legal research for some years at the Northwestern School of Law. The Supreme Court has never said that corporations are persons. A private court reporter who drew up privately drafted notes for a Supreme Court decision came up with that notion, and it seems to have gotten a life all of its own. Corporations are not permanent. They can be terminated at any time that they do not serve the public service, and we should be doing that more often, and we seem to be afraid to do it at all.
All right, now, I thought that was a good precedent. It was a good precedent. Would you identify yourself before you start the question?
Sure. My name is Nathaniel. I'm with the law school, actually. Actually, I have a question that was sort of different than everybody else's. If you notice, all of you guys, you four, no offense, and the current candidates for president in the Democrat and Republican Party have something in common. They're all male, and they're all white, and they're all middle to upper class people. How do we represent the other over half of the population, women, minorities, poor people, young people, in the political process?
You may respond. This one might go on all night, but let's try to keep the responses.
Well, I'll be very brief, and I want to thank you for acknowledging that, and I think that we've got a real problem both in this country as well as in our politics, because the reality is that we have a racist, sexist system, and the Green Party is grappling mightily with trying to break down the barriers. I'm proud that my vice presidential candidate is a woman. I'm proud to tell you that notwithstanding my suit and the fact that you know that I'm a lawyer, I'm not middle class and not upper middle class. I'm actually a member of the working poor. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a house without a flush toilet. I'm the only presidential candidate, I believe, who can say that. And I worked myself up washing dishes, working construction jobs, and I continue to be a member of the working poor. And in the Green Party, white people talk about racism. Men talk about sexism. We're grappling with it. And it's been my commitment that I believe the Green Party should run a woman for president in 2008, and I've been saying that for a long time.
Okay.
And I'd actually...
Yeah, good. Well done. Well done.
Let me just say for the record that I believe that the way to cure any racism is not to have any sort of reverse racism. I believe that... Thank you. My belief actually tells me that there's one race, and that's the human race, and our government should act that way.
I see an eye that wants to go.
Yeah, half of the Socialist Party candidates for president and vice president in the last 3 elections were women. There's a woman running for vice president with me now, Mary Alice Herbert of Vermont. We had a woman from Colorado run in 2000 as vice president, and we had another woman run for president of the United States, Mary Cal Hollis, in 1996. We try to be squeaky clean when it comes to women being on our ballot. After all, Susan B. Anthony was a socialist.
Did you care?
The Libertarian Party protects the individual rights of all individuals, regardless of their gender, race, or sexual persuasion, and we invite everyone to join the Libertarian Party. Our platform is based on the Constitution, individual rights, and private property. And if that's something that you support, please visit us at lp.org.
May I interject the privilege of the chair for just a moment to observe that all of politics in the United States at the behavioral, at the level of bottoms up, is self-selective. And it's still self-selective well up. These people were supported, but they put their names forward and nominated themselves before they got a collective nomination. And I issue a dare and a challenge. Too few women nominate themselves to things, and too few blacks nominate themselves. Raise your bloody self-esteem and get the hell into action. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Adam, and I'm a sophomore. And I was wondering, what is your all stance on United States fossil fuel dependency? And if you propose a shift to renewable energies, how do you believe that shift should be encouraged, and who should be the one encouraging that shift?
I suppose Mr. Green should go first on that one. Anyone else can join, but it looks like...
Well, you know, the Green Party is certainly an ecological party, but not our only issue. But we've been calling for use of sustainable alternative energy sources since the inception of the Green Movement, and we are a worldwide movement premised upon ecology and social justice issues. Let's understand that the technology exists right now to produce energy with sustainable sources: wind power, solar power, geothermal power. We should also be moving to intrastate transportation using trains. Why aren't we doing these common sense things? There are simple solutions to all the problems that face us today. They're not being implemented because we, the people, don't actually rule this government. The same corporations that I've been railing about for the last several years continue to have a death grip on U.S. foreign policy as well as energy policy. And as soon as more Greens continue to get elected to office, we'll be able to shift towards those technologies that already exist. Vote Green.
For many years, the Socialist Party in this country has pushed for renewable energy. In 1975, when I was a member of the Oregon State Senate, I put in a bill to encourage hot dry rock geothermal. That project got almost to completion at Los Alamos during the Clinton administration, when the Clinton Department of Energy directed that they pour concrete down their test holes. How do I know it? The lead engineer, Donald W. Brown of Los Alamos, is my brother. Who's picking it up? The Australians.
The reason that we are addicted to oil and our current automotive transportation system is because our government has been subsidizing those industries for decades. The proper solution is to remove those subsidies, which is going to have the short-term effect of raising the cost of gasoline at the pump. That will motivate people to drive less, ride their bicycles more, and will motivate other companies to produce new forms of energy, new forms of transportation that are cleaner, cheaper, and more efficient. The only thing that I would recommend is that we gradually remove those so that the price of gas doesn't go up too dramatically. But it's a problem that we created, and we're going to have to solve it by allowing the free market. So the other answer is that the consumers will decide what the best sources of energy and forms of transportation are.
I'm going to briefly agree with Mr. Bednarik that I think that the answers to this are private and need to come from private sources. Forgive me for returning to the Constitution again. I'm going to seem like a broken record, but I don't see anywhere in Article 1, Section 8 that says that we can have a federal energy policy or a federal energy department. We're just not authorized to do that. If we want to amend the Constitution and do that, we may. Now, there may be a place in here for national defense with respect to defense, which is authorized under the Constitution, that we can develop energy policies that aid our national defense. But I think the marketplace is the place where this needs to occur. And I think with the track record of the federal government actually being the problem and not the solution to the problem, I would be very wary of federal answers, top-down answers to energy. And the question remains, they're not constitutional.
I think it's this side now.
My name is Jordan Wells. I want to ask this question from whatever candidate can answer it. most enthusiastically, and the question is about instant runoff voting. And
Instant runoff voting. Speaking. Yeah.
is it about instant runoff voting and other answers to the barriers of the two-party system, and also maybe elaborate on the possibility of like a parliamentary system, or what other solutions we have in mind, and why the four of you haven't come together all together to push instant runoff voting, which could make each of your parties thrive.
That sounds academic, but by God, that's the main question of the night, best answered by guys who are candidates from smaller parties being discriminated against. Who would like to start? Be brief, because you could go on all day on this one, but be brief and stern about it.
I'll be real brief. I've really only just begun to learn about instant runoff voting, and the lesson I got actually tonight was from Mr. David Cobb, who gave me a good lesson in it. So I would actually defer, and I thank him for that. I mentioned it because I thank him, and I think it may be without committing to it, it may be an answer.
Well, thank you, Michael. Oh, well, I'll sure do it. Let me say, what other
Be
people...
brief. Watch out.
Watch this, Professor. What other people call spoiling, we call participating. We are going to exercise our democratic right to participate in elections, the Constitution Party, Green Party, Socialist Party, Libertarian Party. And so if we're causing any problem by participating, the solution cannot be to squelch our voices or to restrict voter choices. We desperately need more voices and more choices. The solution is to change the voting system that's forcing voters to feel like they have to vote against what they hate rather than for what they want. The solution is instant runoff voting. It is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Instant runoff voting empowers the voter to cast their votes amongst the candidates according to their preference. My first choice, my second choice, my third choice. It's just that easy. Folks, I've taught elementary school children how to vote with instant runoff voting. Now, determining the election is equally easy because you just ask amongst all of the candidates, did anybody get a majority of the first preference votes cast? If so, that candidate is elected. If nobody got an actual majority of first preference votes, you say, well, who got the fewest number of votes? Because we're going to eliminate that candidate. But you see, under instant runoff voting, people who cast votes for that eliminated candidates didn't waste their vote. Why? Because they've already indicated their runoff preference. They've already said who their second choice is amongst the existing candidates. Simply transfer those second choices amongst the remaining candidates. You get a majority, you elect somebody. Simple as pie.
Beautiful explanation. Anyone else? Be sure just to record your for and against. I think we've got the thing cleared up.
Definitely for. I must confess, though, that way back in 1901 when we wrote our first party platform, this hadn't been invented. So we just spoke in terms of more widespread use of proportional representation, initiative, referendum, and recall.
The reason that we have a two-party system right now is because you're only allowed to vote for one candidate. It's a mathematical function. We do need to go to either instant runoff voting or approval voting, which I actually prefer, but that's not going to happen until we change the system. If you continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, that's the definition of insanity. If you continue voting for the Democrats and Republicans and you expect Washington to change, you're crazy. So I recommend that you avoid this wasted vote fallacy and vote for the candidate of your choice.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question.
Good evening. I'd like to briefly paraphrase the CNN analysis last night that said he would gladly vote for anyone with the guts to not wear a red tie at a debate. But my question is more serious. What would you do to fight poverty and urban decay that's plaguing our country?
Welfare, charity, is an important thing in America and always has been. Here's the broken record again. It's just not the role of the federal government. Federal welfare programs are an absolute mess and they're a waste. These charity, I'm in favor of charity. It should be done by individuals or families or churches. Correctly understood, the federal government or any civil government should not be feeding, clothing, or housing anyone. It's not in the jurisdiction of the civil government to do so.
I think it's really It's very important to remember that the Social Security Administration, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation laws, all of these programs were designed because of the abject failure of depending upon mere charity, handouts from the super rich. I'm proud that the Green Party says we need to have a fair tax system, tax the super rich, tax the corporations, cut the bloated military budget. There's plenty of money to go around, and it is absolutely shameful. I mean shameful for the richest country in the world to have 40 to 50 million Americans without adequate health care, to have homeless people in this country, and under a Green Party administration, it would simply be eliminated.
The Constitution talks in terms of enhancing the general welfare, not corporate welfare. We've got a lot of corporate welfare in this country and not enough general welfare. Oregon has the highest hunger rate of any state in the Union with Democratic and Republican administrations. We have near the highest unemployment rate. The Socialist Party has always been for public housing and Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and aid to families with dependent children. In fact, back in a few years ago, the Oregonian reported it was the Socialist Party that first advocated creation of the Social Security system. We don't want to privatize it. We don't want to increase the age. We want to reduce it to 65 and keep it funded by taxing everybody for their entire income from salaries.
Well, the best way to eliminate poverty is to make sure the people have more money. And the government is basically a parasite on the economy. The government costs money. Every time we create a federal agency, we have to pay for the lights, pay for the air conditioning, pay for the people who sit at those desks. The libertarian solution is to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government back to the descriptions in Article 1, Section 8. That would put billions of dollars back in the hands of the people who would then spend it, raise their standard of living, and there will be small businesses springing up to provide new goods and services for everyone.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm a junior in the School of Industrial and Labor Relations. I was wondering if you recognize the right of workers to organize as a fundamental human right, and if so, what are your plans to restore that right to American workers and workers worldwide for that matter?
Let me jump right in there, Patrick. Thank you for that. The Green Party not only recognizes the right of workers to organize, we call for a repeal of the Taft-Hartley Slave Labor Act. We call for a return to the Wagner Anti-Injunction Act. It's the only way. We have to understand that workers' rights are fundamental human rights, just as important political rights as anything else. We're also a political party that says repeal NAFTA, get us out of the World Trade Organization, and begin to move towards genuine sustainable economic practices. And realize this, folks, it is small businesses that actually drive the economic engine of this country, not the big corporations.
Everybody wants a piece of this one. Go ahead.
Through the years, it has been labor organizers and working people who have founded and been the guiding light of the Socialist Party. Eugene Debs organized the railroad workers. A. Philip Randolph organized the Pullman Porters Union. An interesting point here along here is that during the debate on the China Most Favored Nation trade status law, there was an amendment put in by late Paul Wellstone, Democrat of Minnesota, in which he said we should check the problems in China with the imprisoning of labor organizers and union activists. It was voted down on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Who voted against it, among others? John Kerry. Page S44 of the 2000 Congressional Quarterly Almanac. Negative vote on labor rights in China. No better in this country.
Libertarian Party does believe in a person's right to organize and associate with whomever they want. We do not recognize the right to use force and the threat of force to prevent other people from doing work. If you want to join a union, that's perfectly fine. But if you prevent me from crossing the picket line and providing that same service at a cheaper price, you're disturbing the free market, and we're not in favor of that.
All very clear.
Hi, my name's David Teal. This is more of a how to spend each party's resources. Obviously, each third party has very finite resources due to reasons we've already discussed. How important is it for each party to spend those resources trying to get local people elected to local positions, such as state senate or even lower school board elections, as opposed to spending money on the presidential campaigns that you four are obviously running very well? So basically, how important is it to spend the few resources the four parties have on local elections as opposed to on the national stage?
Well, resources are finite, Michael. You're absolutely right. And it is important to the Constitution Party, and I'm sure these other gentlemen, their parties as well, actually spend money at both levels. We're all trying to plant the banner, the national banner, that is to say, run a presidential candidate. And at the same time, we are working to have local candidates elected as well and spend money in that way as well. It is the difficulty is, I would say the two major difficulties for us are ballot access, and the rules for ballot access are 50 different sets of rules, or 51 if you count the district, and they're invented by Democrats and Republicans to make it difficult for these gentlemen and for my party to actually get ballot access. It's like rolling a big rock uphill all day long, trying to know the rules in 51 different places and then to do them. And secondly, to get major media attention. We have to earn our media. For the most part, we don't get it free like the Democrats and Republicans do. When we ask you for contributions, we have to do that. The major parties haven't really asked. In many ways, they've already taken their contributions from you through your tax dollars. So we have to actually ask you for them. I just wanted to point that out.
I appreciate the question. The Green Party's growth has been coming at the local level. The great untold story is the phenomenal growth of the Green Party. In 1996, 40 elected office holders, mostly at the local level. In 2000, we had grown to 87 elected office holders. Today, we have 207 elected Greens serving, making people's lives better on our agenda and our program and platform. That's where the real energy on the Green Party is. But we do need to run a presidential candidate for reasons of ballot access in order to continue to be invited to forums like this. Thank you, Cornell, for providing this opportunity. So I would urge folks, go to our website at www.votecobb.org. Make up your own mind. Look at us on the issues, and if you support us, give us a small donation. I promise you that we will leverage every single penny we get in order to help to build and grow the Green Party at the local level and take our country back.
Let me interject one moment here. I promise all of you, I will say in public that I want each of them more than once to repeat their website, their email number, so you can be reached. Don't have to sneak it in, but try your best to do it. Get your pencils and papers ready, but go ahead now.
In Oregon, really, our success in recent years has been at the local level. Soil and water conservation districts, school boards, city councils. At one time, we had 1,500 local elected officials in this country. We've only elected a handful of people to Congress, only one presidential electoral votes in one election in 24 in Wisconsin with La Follette. It's the ground building. In the last election in Oregon, there were 5 times as many socialists running for local office as the Greens had on the ballot. Those were for state legislative offices. You have to build from the ground up. You never can build from the top down, because sooner or later, your top is going to disappear.
The reason that we run presidential candidates is because we get advertising. I mean, how many of you would come to hear a debate between, like, county librarians? The audience is filled, the auditorium is filled today because we are presidential candidates. And what we are doing is we are spreading the message for all of the candidates that we have at the city, state, and other levels. And we do encourage you to vote for Libertarians at all levels. The Libertarian Party has over 600 elected officials. We have more candidates on the ballot and more political support than all of the other third parties combined.
Hi, my name is Lisa Schlitt, and I'm a sophomore here. And I have a question about the Patriot Act and certain practices the current administration is giving. Certain officials, like John Ashcroft, the Attorney General, have stated that people are quote-unquote un-American if they don't support certain government actions, such as military tribunals or the passing of laws such as the Patriot Act or the imprisoning of American citizens as enemy combatants. And I myself, because I'm a bit of a liberal person in a very conservative area, have been told I'm un-American because I do not support the war or those practices. And my question is, do you feel that the government has the right to restrict certain rights or to pass laws such as the Patriot Act in times of war or crisis?
I see a hand already.
Benjamin Franklin said those who are willing to sacrifice their liberty for some measure of security deserve neither, and he was absolutely right. The Patriot Act, I believe, by the way, was on the shelf and ready to be pulled down off the shelf and enacted, and I believe 911 was just a pretext for it to occur. It is a gross violation of the Fourth Amendment. It's unconstitutional in a number of ways, and we stand against the Patriot Act and actually what it represents, which is an unorthodox and unconstitutional trade-off of the people's liberty. And by the way, Lisa, is it? You have every right to stand up and make your voice known and not be called un-American or anti-American because you do that.
Thank you.
Lisa, I want to also thank you for asking, I think, the first substantive question that you're going to get an unequivocal, unambiguous agreement from all four of us. The Patriot Act is unconstitutional. It may be the worst piece of legislation that has come down the pike as it relates to civil liberties in this country. And I want to go further to tell you that there are 300 communities and counties and even a few states that have passed resolutions against it, which is powerful. The Declaration of Independence is a resolution. Resolutions can be powerful. But I'm proud to tell you that in Arcata, California, thanks to Green Party folks getting elected to office, we've passed the first ordinance at the local level that makes complying with the Patriot Act illegal under local law. Can you imagine that? Arcata, California said this violates the civil liberties of our citizens, and we're telling the librarian, the county folks, that you're not going to comply with it. That's what we need to start doing more of in this country, not less.
Now I'm beginning to see that Baptist culture that he was raised in. All right.
John Ashcroft was a lawyer, is a lawyer. I've been a lawyer over 50 years. Don't get enamored by the fact a person is a lawyer. Richard Nixon was a lawyer, and he was disbarred. Spiro Agnew was a lawyer, vice president, he was disbarred. Mitchell, the attorney general, was a lawyer, and he was disbarred. I would recommend that for other lawyers who are kicking around. How many will...
Y'all don't look over here at me, so...
No. How many senators voted against the USA Patriot Act? One. Russell Feingold of Wisconsin. John Kerry voted for it. He's a lawyer. He should know better. He also voted for a similar law in 1996. Ask him why he voted for it.
All right. You got a point?
The USA Patriot Act is the most egregiously unconstitutional piece of legislation ever to leave Congress since the Alien and Sedition Act. Any member of Congress who voted for it ought to be indicted, and John Ashcroft should be indicted for trying to enforce it. The Declaration of Independence states that we have the right to alter or abolish our government because it works for us. Unfortunately, as I've been campaigning, I've discovered that there are free speech zones on many campuses, which means that anywhere outside the auditorium is not a free speech zone. There was a free speech zone in Boston outside the Democratic National Convention, which consisted of a chain link fence and razor wire. This is not a free speech zone. That is a concentration camp, and I am appalled that anybody would label that a free speech zone in the United States. Anywhere I happen to be standing is a free speech zone. Anywhere you happen to be standing. Anywhere you happen to be standing is a free speech zone, and I encourage you to exercise your freedom of speech and criticize the government anytime you see it doing something that violates your rights. And our website is lp.org.
Let me just interject. That bon mot belongs in every future edition of Bartlett's quotations. That's magnificent. Everywhere I stand is a free speech zone. May I steal it from you?
What's that?
Henry Adams once said, "You haven't arrived as an intellectual until you've been stolen from." And man, you have arrived with that one.
Hi, my name's Dan Crawford. I'm a sophomore in the College of Arts and Sciences. My question is for Mr. Cobb. In your introductory speech and in the Green Party platform, you make a big endorsement for a living wage. I think I read today that the living wage in Ithaca is $8.68 an hour. I make $7 an hour, and I don't need another $1.68. I will just spend it on music and alcohol. And
Are you above 21?
Sure.
Okay.
Anyway, my question is, aren't there better ways to redistribute wealth and make sure that every person gets a living wage than for raising the minimum wage for everyone, including those of us who don't deserve it, and thereby taxing or unfairly hurting small businesses?
No, Dan, there is not a better way to ensure that everybody makes a living wage. Let me finish.
Okay.
The reality is this. If the minimum wage had been tied to cost of living adjustments, it would already be well over the $7.68 or even $8 or $9 an hour that it is now. You know, if you don't want your raise, then give it back or give it away. But the reality is that most Americans who are trying to survive on a minimum wage are living below the poverty level. And let's look at it from a public policy standpoint. Those folks then have to come to your tax dollars in order to get health care, in order to get assistance for living expenses, etc. You know, we're saying that everybody who works ought to make enough money to raise themselves above the poverty level, live in actual dignity as a result of their own work and labor. That is noble. That is the right thing to do. And, you know, if you want to give the money back, by all means, give it back.
Okay. That's it. Yeah.
The Libertarian...
If you want to expand on that, get up in line and take the next question. Yeah, please, really, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Libertarian Party is opposed to minimum wage laws because if I can afford to pay you $5 an hour, that's what you're going to get. If they raise the minimum wage to $7, your choice is not between $5 and $7. Your choice is between $5 and being unemployed. Minimum wage laws put lots of people out of work, specifically the people that they are intended to protect.
If the Democratic and Republican administrations in Congress were willing to keep the minimum wage indexed to inflation, of course we would be a lot better. But they are not willing to do that. In Oregon, by initiative, and because the minimum wage law permits local option, we have the highest minimum wage in the country and is not driving business out of the state. Secondly, don't export jobs through NAFTA. Don't outsource outside the country. Third, public power, which is cheaper. Fourth, national health care, which lowers your cost of health care insurance. And fifth, college education, like my GI Bill, where my whole tuition and living expenses were paid. A good investment in the future and better jobs for the graduates.
Minimum wage is unconstitutional.
Did I miss? What's over there next? Okay.
I'm Dylan Lanehart. I come from Binghamton, New York, and my family has a long history of small business. What would you as president do for small business? So all of you, I guess.
Address to all four. Anyone have a tangent?
Well, the first thing you'd have to do is find the authority to do it. The federal government is a government of limited enumerated powers. And in order to do whatever it wants to do, it has to find that power and find that authority. So questions like this may be things that may be good things to do. They may be good thing for private organizations to do. They may be good thing actually for state governments to do. But unless there's jurisdiction and authority for the federal government to do, if it does something, it's law-breaking and unlawful.
We'll move further on. Let's start with you.
The Libertarian Party is basically the party of small businesses or for small businesses. We recognize that these regulations raise the cost of doing business, and they are going to put small businesses out of business. What we want to do is allow you to do what you do best, is to provide goods and services to your customers. And if you provide a faulty good or service, then those people have a right to legislate against you, or not legislate against you, but to take you to court. So it is in your best interest to provide goods and services that your customers are going to enjoy.
Many costs make up cost centers for business. Cost of utilities, they should be public. Cost of health care, it should be national. The cost of taxes, they should be progressive. The way your bankruptcy laws are established. The Bush bankruptcy deform law was opposed by small business. No small businessman in his right mind should vote for Bush. The highest vote the Socialist Party has ever got in this country was for family farmers, small businessmen in Oklahoma at 25% of the vote. We have a lot of family farmers and a lot of small business people in our party because it's the way to go.
It's really simple. Probably the single most important thing that a Green Party administration could do for small businesses is to repeal NAFTA, get the United States government out of the World Trade Organization, and end the corporate managed trade system that's destroying small businesses, small ranchers, small farmers in this country. Interconnected to that is a fair tax system. Tax the corporations at a fair rate. Small business people and middle class folks, working class people, are paying a disproportionate share of their income. And lastly, universal single payer health insurance or health care, single payer universal health care would actually unleash the burden that small businesses are currently feeling on the need to provide health insurance in the privatized model where only pharmaceutical corporations and big fat cat insurance corporations are making the real profit. The Green Party is a very pro-small business party, and we got actual plans, and I'd urge you to check us out on the web at www.gp.org. Our entire platform is indexed in excruciating detail, and small business people might want to take a look at it.
All right. Over here. Yes.
Hi, my name is Tyler. I'm a government major, and Professor Lowe, we miss you at Government 111. This question is directed toward the Libertarian candidate. In 2000, the American people half of them chose not to vote at all, and the other half that chose not to elect you. Most of them chose Democrat, some of them chose Republican, and some of them have chosen not to even look into the third-party candidates. For a party that trusts the people to choose, how do you recognize or reconcile the fact that the people have chosen and it's not you, and people have chosen not to even consider you?
You're all equally in jeopardy on this one.
I understand that I have a difficult job.
Try to be brief. You've got your life tied to this one, but try to be brief.
I have. I realize that the Democrats and Republicans have pretty much got things sewed up. They have ballot access laws that make it difficult, if not impossible, for third parties to get on the ballot. They exclude us from the debates so that we can't have our message heard. And basically the national media tends to ignore us. But I am doing the right thing. George Washington fought the American Revolution with 2,000 regular soldiers. The rest were ordinary militia, and they were fighting against the most powerful army on the face of the world. I know that I've got the odds against me, but I am trying to restore constitutional limitations to our government. Why would you vote for somebody that's going to raise your taxes, continue the war, continue to pass unconstitutional laws, and basically interfere in your life? I don't understand that.
The non-voters in this country see in power either a Democratic incumbent or a Republican incumbent. Facing that, I can see why they're discouraged. Why can't third parties get on the ballot in most states in this country? Because the Democratic and Republican parties do their level best to keep them off. I was kept off in Colorado by a Republican Secretary of State and a Democratic Attorney General, put another $10,000 on a home loan. Case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld the trial court that said they were both out to lunch. The law was very clear. We should be on the ballot. They're fighting the Green Party. They're fighting Ralph Nader. They do not believe in political democracy. They believe in a monopoly, like Walmart believes in having the entire market penetration in a small town. We have to have political democracy in this country.
Yeah. You know, what we keep talking about third parties, but let's say alternative parties, because we're alternative voices that need to be heard. And I mean this seriously, y'all. Look at American history. Systemic change, real change, meaningful change has only come from alternative parties. The abolition of slavery, women getting the right to vote, creating the Social Security Administration, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, pure food and drug laws, ending child labor, the 40-hour work week. The reality is the entire fabric that all of us, or most of us, would agree to be the bare minimum for a just and compassionate society was literally woven together by alternative parties before us. So if you like the corporatist, militarist nature of both the Democratic and Republican parties, I suggest you keep voting for them. But if you want to see some systemic change, some meaningful change, you need to look at alternative parties. And I think the Green Party is a good place to look.
When our forefathers were fighting against the greatest army in the world, the greatest navy in the world, Great Britain, and they didn't have a chance to succeed, when John Quincy Adams was trying to end slavery in America, and he saw that he didn't have a chance, it was an impossible task, he said, duty is ours and consequences are God's. That is to say, duty is ours to do, and the results are up to God. We say in Institute on the Constitution, you got to plow your row, and the harvest is up to God. But you got to plow your row. We're doing our duty here. It is our duty to stand up and really be the second party. I agree with Mr. Cobb that the two major parties have, from all principial purposes, merged together. They are one party. We need a second party. We need an alternative to that. And the Constitution, since I'm the only one who hasn't given my web address right here, it's godfamilyrepublic.com. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I'm a junior here. And from your previous response to the question on the war in Iraq, I gathered that you all are generally isolationists, or at least extremely cynical about the nature of U.S. intervention in other countries. And from the perspective of a college student studying history at a generally liberal university, I definitely sympathize with the idea that American foreign policy of the past and present is wrought with disaster, but at the same time, I think you guys, as presidential candidates, have a responsibility to put forth a constructive foreign policy platform. So instead of just criticizing the situation that we're in, I was just wondering what you guys would do to improve it.
That's it. Who wants to begin? All right.
Fair question. I know time is getting short, so I'll address it as briefly as I can. The purpose of the American military is to protect America, not to go traipsing off on wars for empire across the globe. John Adams said, we are friends of liberty everywhere, but guardians of our own. And it's not, and nowhere in Article 2 does it say that the president is the policeman of the world. He talks, our present president talks about making the world safer. The world is not his constituency. He's not the president of the world. He's not the president of the Middle East. He is the president of the United States of America, and we are his constituency. So the purpose and the focus, the principle should be protecting America's interest, not a globalist agenda.
I appreciate your question. The Green Party is an international party based on fundamental principles and values. And the current foreign policy of this country is at odds with any reasonable understanding of human rights or values. But I want to be clear, I am not an isolationist, and neither is the Green Party. Go to our website at gp.org, and you'll see in excruciating detail our calls for foreign policy. But I want to say this. I'm proud of the fact that the Green Party early said we need actual military intervention in Rwanda, in the Sudan, in order to stop genocide. But you know, it's interesting that we only seem to use U.S. military force when there's oil or other natural resources to steal, but we don't seem to be willing to do it whenever there are lives at stake. So I'm not an isolationist at all.
Now you get your chance to read that passage.
I get to read the book.
Be brief.
I am not an isolationist. I'm not a pacifist. I grew up watching Mussolini's, the fascist Italian government's airplanes machine gunning Ethiopians in North Africa. But there's a time to use force. But we should be using UN peacekeeping forces and not going in unilaterally to save our oil skins, as we have in Iraq. But we ought to remember that was Donald Rumsfeld in the early 1980s who was shaking hands with Saddam Hussein and recommending that we sell them military aircraft. What happened in East Timor? The interesting quote coming up fast. It's disappearing. Here we go. In the late 70s were the darkest years in East Timor's history. 200,000 people out of a population of 600,000 died because of weapons sold by America. My own sister Maria was killed by a plane delivered to Indonesia 2 weeks before by the Carter administration. Those planes caused huge devastation in East Timor. My two brothers were among the thousands killed. The Democratic and Republican administrations in this country have supported dictators all over the world. Who saw Saddam Hussein is one of them. And when he turns on us or threatens to turn on us, we ask for it in effect.
We've reached that time where we have to save the last segment for wrap-ups for these four gentlemen. I'm sorry, if all of you promise to be brief, because this will rob you from some of your time, I'll take one more question, and that's all the time we'll have in order to give you some wrap-up time. So go ahead for one more, but be brief in your response, whatever.
All right, great. Thank you, Professor. My name is Paul Ibrahim, President of the Cornell Review and President of the Cornell Coalition for Life. And my question is about an issue that has been on the back burner for some reason, and that is abortion, especially partial birth abortion. Most Americans do oppose the procedure, and of course it's the procedure where the abortionist sticks a tube in the baby's skull, the brain's sucked out, the skull collapses, and the baby, he or she, is pulled out of the mother, obviously dead. So I'd like to see where each of you stand on abortion and what your justification for it is. Thank you very much.
Okay,
this is one of those places.
Very brief.
I'm sorry. This is one of those places where the Democrats and Republicans really have the same position. They both favor killing babies. It's just a matter of how much they'll spend and how many babies they'll kill. The partial birth abortion, which is credited to Mr. Bush as being a successful thing, really concretized all those other abortions into law in America. We are 100% pro-life, 100% anti-abortion, all 9 months, however you want to say it, no exceptions. As soon as you make exceptions, you are not pro-life, you're pro-death.
And the Green Party is 100% pro-woman, 100% pro-choice, 100% woman has a right to do what she will with her own body as a matter of fundamental civil rights, civil liberties, human rights, and we will never waver from that position.
The abortion issue is something that has the population of the United States split, and it also has the Libertarian Party split. The basic philosophy of the Libertarian platform is that each of us owns our own body. And from that, we derive the fact that the woman owns her body. It is certainly not my job, nor is it the federal government's job, to tell her what she can or cannot do with her body. Therefore, the Libertarian platform is pro-choice. But there are many libertarians who understand that the baby owns its body at some point. Clearly, after the baby is born, it owns its body, but there is possibility that the baby owns its body sometime before that, either at the time of conception, the time the heart starts beating, the time the brain starts functioning. I am not smart enough to make that choice. I will not make that choice for you. We do not think this is a federal issue. This is not a states' rights issue. This is an individual rights issue, and every person has to struggle with that decision themselves.
A tough question, particularly for the Socialist Party, which has within its ranks people of all religious persuasion and all feelings on this issue. But our platform says we support the right of women to all reproductive health services, including abortion. You're going to have to interpret that the way you hear it. My vice presidential candidate believes that a woman should have the right to abort a child that is 8 months, 30 days along. I don't agree. Let me just say, on partial birth abortions, the bill that passed Congress did not permit an exception where the life of the woman was threatened. I would have opposed that bill. I wouldn't have signed it as president. I wouldn't have signed it as I was in Congress, if I were in Congress. But I would certainly support that partial birth abortion if it's important to save the life of the woman.
All right, we are now at the last segment. And we agreed that there would be 2-minute presentations, wrap-ups by each of our candidates. And I'll interpret that somewhat in a relaxed way, but not too much. This is getting along here, and we're going to lose our audience and our cameras and everything. So let's take it in reverse order. So you were number 4, you begin number 1. Is that all right with you?
That's fine with me.
Good. All right, here we go.
I'd like to start with my website again, our lp.org. The campaign phone number is 800-807-7552, and you can call for bumper stickers or yard signs. We, again, all of the candidates here are fighting against this fallacy of the wasted vote syndrome. The only wasted vote is a vote that you cast for a candidate that you do not respect. We are supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, and those two things are not independent of each other. If you want to be free, you must also be brave enough to vote your conscience. So again, I strongly recommend that you go and you research all of the parties, determine which party best represents your views, and then vote for that party. Campaign for those candidates. Find local candidates in your area that you can support and help. Politics is always going to be interested in you, whether you are interested in politics or not. And I strongly recommend that you participate so that you can have the type of government that you really deserve. Thank you very much.
Again, you respect me. You do respect all budgets, including budgets of time. That's very good. All right.
Please look up www.waltbrownforpresident.org. For many listening to this program, this may be their first presidential vote. Use it wisely, vote with courage and hope for a better political order, not merely out of fear of the political disorder in the White House. Plant a seed for a political system where one major party is a Democratic Party of the left, progressive, humane, fiscally responsible, dedicated not to the growth of corporate welfare, but to the growth of the general welfare. I leave you with 4 short quotations. Eugene Victor Debs, founder of the Socialist Party in 1901. I'm for socialism because I believe in humanity. I'll skip the quotations from Felix Frankfurter when he was endorsing Senator La Follette in 1924. He pleads for a responsible party of the left that can bring about the American dream. The third quotation from George Orwell, which many people think was an anti-socialist. In fact, he was one of the most active socialists in England. And he said in 1937, "There's no chance of saving England from fascism unless we can bring an effective socialist party into existence. All that is needed is to hammer two facts home into the public consciousness. One, that the interests of all exploited people are the same. The other, that socialism is compatible with common decency." And the last quote from Martin Luther King, 1965, written while he was in jail, struggling for the struggles and the goals we all seek. If we are going to achieve a real equality, the U.S. will have to adopt a modified form of socialism. Thank you, Martin Luther King.
Folks, if more people don't start turned on to politics, politics will continue to turn on us. We, the people, have got to come together and grapple with the fact that unelected, unaccountable corporate CEOs have hijacked our government, our institutions, our very culture. The Green Party's growing because we're telling the truth, and we're also growing because we're doing the work, rolling up our sleeves to get the job done, and I'm proud of that. And I also want to point something else out, that what you've seen here today is four gentlemen who agreed on some things, had some incredibly sharp disagreements on others, but we were respectful to one another. We demonstrated how you can actually conduct a debate. And it's really too bad that the American people don't get more of an opportunity not only to hear civil discourse that includes such sharp disagreement, but also genuine alternative views. www.votecobb.org. Check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find out about our campaign at godfamilyrepublic.com, godfamilyrepublic.com. That is our website. There is an American view of government, and it begins, as our declaration begins, there is a creator God. Our rights come from him. We've heard a lot about rights tonight, the right to this and the right to that. But where do rights come from? Rights come from God. That's why they're unalienable. The purpose of government is to protect and defend those rights. It's not to redistribute wealth. We've heard a lot about socialism tonight. In a socialist understanding, the state is God. All things, all blessings come from the state, cradle to grave, womb to tomb. It is anti-American. And the people have no rights, and the purpose of government is to redistribute wealth. A woman has no fundamental right to murder her baby. No fundamental right to murder her child. There is no right to do that. Rights come from God. I'd be hard-pressed to understand where that right could come from. Thank you.
Since we have a couple of minutes before the 9:30, I would like to take the liberty of thanking these four gentlemen. First, I will tell you that they are exemplary in terms of the way to conduct debate. I think they would make two marvelous parties. I see a coalition between two couples here, and I'd like to see that happen. I'll leave you to guess what. They could be one party on very important matters. But all I want to tell you from that is that if you were looking for substance this year, you found it here. You will not find it on those debates of joint press conferences that are happening on the networks these days. I want to congratulate you all for coming. You should be proud of yourselves and for your enthusiasm. Please keep the flame. And let us now join in a round of applause to thank our four speakers. Our four candidates.
Senator Kerry will be in Santa Fe, New Mexico tomorrow for a campaign rally.